Every day, more buying decisions are happening in places that you can't track. Some of these places you might not even realize are part of your customer's journey. ChatGPT, Perplexity, and Google AI Mode and AI Overviews, they're all influencing purchases. Straightforward tracking and attribution just isn't really a thing yet. So right now, a lot of us are missing vital information about where we're getting customers and how we can drive more business through these AI platforms instead of just guessing about what works. I'm Chris, and in this video, I'm going to tell you more about what the attribution gap is in AI search, and I'm going to give you a 3-tier framework that you can start using today to close that gap. Let's get started. So what is the AI attribution gap? Well, put simply, it's the difference between what influenced one of your customers' buying decisions and what your analytics platform can actually tell you about that influence. So imagine a situation like this. A user has asked ChatGPT what the best project management tools are for small teams with a limited budget, and right at the top, we see a recommendation for the brand Trello. The user might then search for your brand on Google. So in this case, they might Google Trello and they might click the top organic link. And this might be a link to your landing page, and they then might click that link and sign up via your site. Now, in this case, your analytics platform will attribute the conversion to the click on the organic link to your landing page. But the AI interaction that actually drove that decision is invisible because the user didn't click anything within the AI platform itself. So on the surface, it looks like your organic page is ranking well and it's driving traffic. It's driving traffic that is converting into customers. But the page isn't necessarily what did the hard work. Obviously, it played a part, but it was actually the AI discussion that happened before the user even searched for your brand, perhaps before they even heard of your brand. Now, obviously, this is a super simplified version of what's going on, and it's just one example situation, but there's no doubt that AI tools are having influence across pretty much every industry right now, and it's influence that for the most part you can't accurately track. And it's only going to get more common as more and more people use these AI tools to find information, to find brands, and to find products and services. Now, it is worth noting here that attribution has always been a challenge and it has never been perfect. Real buying journeys are messy and it's far more complicated than just visiting your site and then converting. So it's not that attribution was ever perfect, but AI search definitely creates a new channel of influence that often leaves no record at all. Now, that attribution gap is what this video's 3-tier framework aims to close. Let's start with tier 1, and this tier is all about answering the question of whether your brand can even be found in the first place. So before you can appear in any AI-generated answers, your content first needs to be crawlable and usable by AI systems so that they can use your content in their answers and recommend your brand where appropriate. Signals that you want to watch here include whether AI crawlers like GPT-bot or Claude-bot or Perplexity-bot can access your site, how much of your content is structured clearly enough to be extracted and cited by those tools, and then whether your key pages are being indexed in the sources that tools tend to rely on. And in most cases, we're talking about Google and Bing. So these are fundamentals that make attribution possible in the first place, so you can run these checks with a super quick AI visibility audit. So first, you want to make sure you're not blocking any of these AI tools in your robots.txt file. So to demonstrate this, if I go to Traffic Think Tank's robots.txt file here, you can see that we're not blocking anything like GPT-bot, Claude-bot, or Perplexity-bot. So these crawlers should be able to access all of our content. Next, I mentioned making sure your content is structured clearly enough to be extracted and cited by these AI tools. Now, I'm not going to get into the specifics here, but what that essentially means is that you're creating content that is reliable, well laid out, and follows pretty basic SEO and writing best practices. Now, you can learn more about these in this article I've linked in the description about writing content for AI optimization. Now, spoiler, it's a lot of the best practices that you should have been doing all along. And finally, you need to check whether your key pages are being indexed by the likes of Google and Bing. So in Google Search Console, you can come to the Pages report under the Indexing tab, and you can see all of the different issues that might be causing your pages to not be indexed. So you just want to make sure that all of your key pages are in fact indexed. In Bing, you can do a similar thing by heading to the Site Explorer tab, and then you can use this drop down at the top to look at all URLs or filter by index URLs to make sure your key pages turn up in there. But like in Search Console, you can see a bunch of specific errors that might be causing pages to not be indexed. In both Google Search Console and Bing Webmaster Tools, you can use the URL inspection feature to check specific URLs if you have a couple of key pages you want to quickly check whether they're indexed or not. Now, if you perform these 3 checks, you should be able to determine whether your content is eligible to be found by AI tools. Now, ideally, it will be without you having to actually do anything, but if you do have issues here, the Semrush blog has plenty of resources to help you fix them. So now you know that you can be found, but are you actually appearing in AI responses? And that's what tier 2 of our framework is all about. So the metrics I'm going to discuss in tier 2 and tier 3 are directional rather than definitive. And what I mean by that is that you want to cross-reference movements in one against movements in another to build a more accurate picture of your AI attribution. Now, don't worry, I'll give examples of what I mean here as I go. So the first metric you want to track is AI share of voice. Now, this basically measures the percentage of AI generated answers that you appear in for your target queries and how this compares to that of your rivals. Now, this is important to measure because if your AI share of voice increases, your brand is effectively appearing in more AI generated answers and higher up in those answers. And that's obviously a good thing, but if you track this alongside conversions and you can see they both move up together, then you have reasonable evidence that an increase in your AI visibility is influencing real business outcomes. And that's what tier 3 is all about, which I'll get onto soon. But on the other hand, if your share of voice is flat or it's shrinking, you want to dig into the reasons why your competitors are winning in AI search compared to you. Because if your share of voice is going down, their share of voice will be going up. Or a new rival is on the scene and they're stealing share of voice from both you and your existing competitors. And I'll link an article in the description that goes through a bunch of reasons that might be causing this change in share of voice. It can be anything from competitors just being more present in the training data of the AI tools to them having stronger authority signals. So it's worth analysing your rivals to understand what the real cause might be, because it might not be something that you're doing wrong. It might just be something that they're doing right that you can learn from. So to track your AI share of voice, use Semrush's AI Visibility Toolkit, and you want to enter your brand into the brand performance tab. And you can see we've got a bunch of examples here. And when you click view report, you'll see a screen like this. Now you can see share of voice versus sentiment over on the right hand side here. But if I head to the narrative drivers tab, we'll see that share of voice by platform. So we can tick these on to see how our share of voice compares across different AI platforms, and again against our competitors. If you scroll down, you can see your share of voice against your rivals over time. Now you can see this data for any site with a Semrush 1 or AI Visibility Toolkit subscription. If you don't have one yet, I'll leave a link in the description so you can sign up for a free trial and you can start closing the attribution gap for your own brand today. Next, you want to see your AI mentions and citations. Now, an AI mention is when your brand is referenced in an AI tool response. So essentially the tool talked about your brand in relation to a question or a prompt from a user. Now, a citation, on the other hand, means that the AI tool included a link back to a specific page on your site. Not every mention comes with a citation, and not every citation is for a brand mention. Citations can provide attribution signals when the user clicks the link, but mentions are more directional, and I'll explain why that's still useful in a moment. But if your citations increase alongside your conversions or referral or direct traffic, which I'll go through in tier 3, your brand getting cited in more AI responses is potentially driving more conversions. So you're essentially seeing that your site is being linked to more often in AI answers, and then conversions coming from referral or direct traffic is going up. Now that implies that people are finding your brand mentioned in AI tools, they're clicking the links in there, and then they're converting as a result. Again, you can't know this for sure, but the more data you gather here and the more signals you track at the same time, the more accurate the picture you can paint. But as I suggested a minute ago, brand mentions, even without a clickable citation, can still shape what the user thinks about your brand. So if you only track citations, you're missing out on instances where AI might have recommended or described you without linking out to you. Now this kind of thing can happen if somebody asks an AI tool a question that isn't directly looking for a brand recommendation. So for example here, if I ask ChatGPT how to start a second brain for task management, you can see very quickly it is mentioning different tools, but none of them have an AI citation attached to them. In fact, this answer didn't even come with any citations because it just used the tool's training data to respond to the question. So in this example, if I had never heard of any of these brands, I might be inclined to Google them, or I could visit those sites directly if I just typed in notion.com, for example, and this brand mention would be invisible in my attribution setup because there is no citation, no link click. So without understanding whether I'm getting a lot of these mentions or not, I can't tell whether they're influencing my customers' buying decisions. Now, while you can't attribute any given mention to a specific conversion, you can still see whether your brand is being mentioned more often and whether that correlates with an increase in results for your business. Now, to track both of these, you want to head back into the AI Visibility Toolkit and this time go to the Visibility Overview tab. This is where you'll see your mentions, citations, and cited pages over time. And if you scroll down and filter by cited pages, you can see all the different pages on your site that are being cited in AI tools. Now, these are pages that you'll definitely want to make sure are up to date and optimized for conversions, because these are pages that you know AI tools are citing in their responses. Now, the final part of this tier is to look at brand sentiment. This measures how AI tools actually talk about your brand in response to users. Basically, if the AI tools aren't saying good things about your brand, it can be having a massive impact on the likelihood of a given user even visiting your site at all, never mind converting. This is something you're just not going to be able to understand without measuring brand sentiment. To do this, you need to regularly check how AI tools are describing your brand when they mention it, and ask yourself whether the descriptions that they give are accurate and if they properly reflect your current products, services, or brand as a whole. Now, this this all matters because brand sentiment can explain conversion patterns that other metrics just cannot on their own. So if your share of voice increases without a corresponding increase in conversions, cross-analyzing that with sentiment could help fill the gap. In other words, if you're being mentioned more often, but not in a favourable way, then that would explain why your conversions aren't increasing as well. And it might point to a messaging issue that you need to fix rather than just a visibility problem. Because you have the visibility, you're just not turning that visibility into results. So how do you track brand sentiment? Well, you can do it manually by running a bunch of prompts in AI tools over time and then noting how the different tools talk about your brand. You can then just track this in a spreadsheet over time to understand whether there are any shifts over time as you update your content and change your brand positioning. But of course, if you want to do this at scale, Semrush has a solution for you. In this case, you want to head to the perception report in the AI visibility toolkit. This will show you how your brand is being talked about across different platforms, and it shows sentiment trends over time against your main rivals. And if you scroll down, you'll get a ton more information about sentiment by feature category and mentions by feature category, and then you'll even be able to see the exact descriptions that AI tools are using when they talk about your brand in response to user queries, and you can do the same for your competitors as well. So I highly recommend digging deeper into the perception report to really understand how these AI tools are talking about your brand. So that's tier 2, but now we move on to arguably the most important tier, and that's all about whether your AI visibility is actually driving business outcomes. This is where you connect your visibility and AI tools to your business goals. And that's essentially what closing the attribution gap is all about. Obviously, the big metric is to track conversions, whether that's sales or demo signups or subscriptions, because that's what makes the money. And there's not much point in driving visibility on any channel if it isn't driving revenue for your business. You can track conversions however you want, but the metrics I'm going to discuss in a moment essentially act as the bridge between showing up in AI answers and turning that visibility into traffic and site visits that can then lead to conversions. The first metric you're going to want to track is branded search volume. And this measures how many people are searching for your brand or your products and services directly. Tracking your brand search volume over time gives you a directional signal, because if your AI mentions are increasing and your brand search volume is also rising, it's a reasonable indication that AI visibility is driving awareness and interest. In other words, you're appearing in more AI answers and you're making people more curious about your brand, and then they are directly searching for it in a search engine like Google. Obviously, just check if you're running any other campaigns that might be causing a branded search volume rise, as that could skew your data here. To track branded search volume, you can jump into Google Search Console and go to the performance report, and then you're going to want to add a filter to filter by queries for your brand name and common misspellings, along with any kind of branded products that people might search for directly. So click add filter, go to query, and then by keyword in here, you can do query containing, and then just add branded terms, your brand name, different spellings of it, that kind of thing, and then you'll hit apply. But Google Search Console actually recently rolled out a new branded queries option here, and to get access to this, you do need a sufficient volume of queries and impressions. But if you click on that and then click apply, it will basically do the same thing as entering things manually. Obviously, it's AI powered, so it might not pick up on all of the different branded terms that you want to pick up on, and it might pick up on some extra ones that you don't want to track, but it's a handy feature that they recently added. And you can see here for Traffic Think Tank, it has filtered for the brand name in different variations, the Slack community, because that's a key component of the brand, and then it also filters for direct searches for things like login pages as well. So you want to track your branded search impressions and clicks over time to see whether they correlate with AI visibility changes. For example, are you seeing an increase in AI visibility and an increase in branded searches? If you are, you can probably tie those two metrics together and understand that your increasing AI visibility is also driving wider brand awareness. Now, obviously that connection will be stronger if you're also seeing increases in other metrics like mentions and citations, and also direct traffic, which is the next metric that we're going to track. Direct traffic includes visits where a user typed in your URL directly or clicked a bookmark, but it can also include traffic from some unknown sources as well. So this captures visits where the true source is unknown, and this increasingly includes AI influenced visits that don't pass any referral data. So tracking this and how it changes over time can give you a rough proxy for your growing AI influence. To get an estimate of how much AI is contributing to your direct traffic, you can pull numbers from before AI tools became widely used, so around 2023, and then compare them to now. If direct traffic has grown without a corresponding increase in paid spend or email marketing efforts or anything else that you know could be driving direct traffic, AI influence is the most likely explanation. Now, you can do this in Google Analytics via the traffic acquisition report, and you can just filter the graph to only show direct and change the date range up here to be from before AI tools became widely available and today. So you can see for one of my sites here, this was before 2023, and then we see quite a clear increase after 2023. Now, this is a proxy and it's not a precise measurement because a lot of factors can account for trends when you're measuring things over several years, but it is a useful data point to include in a broader picture, because if you had next to no direct traffic before AI tools came on the scene, a bit like I did, and then you started driving a reasonable amount of it whenever AI tools started mentioning your brand more often, then you can often correlate the two together. This is particularly true if you can pinpoint times where you started actively optimizing for AI visibility. For example, if that's what I did around this point and then I saw an increase in direct traffic almost tripling, that would suggest that the increase in direct traffic likely tied into the increase in AI visibility. Now, obviously, if you want to track direct traffic increases on a more recent timescale, you can just adjust the timeline up here and you can see how it increases, or in this case decreases, over time. So along with direct traffic, you'll also want to track referral traffic. Now, Google Analytics actually recently added an AI assistant filter, and you can see this within the traffic acquisition report. And it's not perfect, but it's a good example of how tools are evolving to help us marketers close this attribution gap. But I'll link to an article on the Semrush blog that shows another way you can filter this GA4 report to show even more potential AI visits, and you can find that linked in the description below. Finally, moving away from tools, you can use self-reported attribution to help gather more data directly from your users. So this is where you directly ask your customers how they found you, and this is a valuable way to gauge how AI is influencing their purchase decisions, and it's the only metric that captures the user's own account of how they found you. Again, it's imperfect because people can misremember things and they can make things up, but it can still help you get a more complete picture of the role that AI tools are playing in your conversions. To track this, just add a single optional question to your lead forms, checkout flows, or post-purchase surveys. Just use something simple like, how did you hear about us? You might already have something like this in your checkout flows, but just add options that include tools like ChatGPT, Perplexity, Google AI Mode, and any other AI tools alongside your traditional channels. Now, response rates for this kind of thing are always going to vary. People don't always remember them accurately, as I said, and you need a reasonable volume of responses before any patterns will become really meaningful. But the answers that you do collect are realistically fairly cheap to gather, and they're hard to get any other way. Just make sure you're not introducing friction at critical points of the buying journey. A mandatory question at checkout that could cost you conversions is not worth keeping in place just so that you can try to get some attribution data. So keep it optional and place it somewhere where it won't interrupt your purchase flow. Now, I know I've just thrown a lot of metrics at you and you might not have tracked some of these before. So that's why I've put together this simple checklist that you can use to work through each of these 3 tiers systematically for your own business. It covers everything I've discussed in this video alongside providing some supporting resources at each stage so that you can troubleshoot any issues that you run into. You'll find this free resource linked in the description below. So you now have a 3-tier framework to help close the AI attribution gap and a helpful resource to keep track of all your efforts. Now, I recommend starting ASAP, as the brands that start solving this now will have way more information than their competitors do, and it's information that will help them better understand how they can improve the value of AI search as a customer acquisition channel and a brand growth engine. And the brand leaders that subscribe to the Semrush channel will also get a head start. We're uploading new content every single week to help you grow your online presence, so make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any of our videos. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.